Hello, Jake. You're up next.
Hey, Bart.
How you doing? Where are you playing out of, Jake?
Home game in Tennessee,
Home game in Tennessee. Whereabouts in Tennessee?
right outside of Knoxville.
Oh, you've called in before, right? Yeah, we talked about Cherokee. Yeah. All right. And what's the size of the game?
So it's 5-5 uncapped.
5-5 uncapped. Wow, could be a big game. Okay. And how deep are you?
I am 1850 effective.
1850 effective. Okay. No straddles or anything, or?
Not this hand.
Okay. So no straddle, straight 5-5. Okay. Start us off here.
So we're 7-handed.
Mhm.
Under the gun opens to 20. Folds to the button who calls. And I'm in the big blind with king, queen of diamonds.
Okay.
And I 3-bet to 90.
Sounds pretty good to me here, Jake. So 7-handed under the gun, the 20, button calls, you got a dead caller in there, and you got pretty good hand in the big blind. King, queen of diamonds, and you 3-bet here to 90. I don't know what the deal is with how tight the under the gun guy is, but there are certain times, this is not one of them, where I will call sometimes with some strong hands from the big blind heads up against an under the gun guy that I deem as tight. So I don't know if you would have always 3-bet this anyways versus under the gun if button hadn't called.
I feel like I'm calling sometimes, but most of the time I'm going to be 3-betting out of the big blind.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. So, okay, so you 3-bet to 90.
Yep, and they both call.
So you go 4x. 4x plus a dead call here would be to 100. And you're at both these guys are at 1850, by the way, or you have them covered or whatever?
They both have me covered.
Okay, so you're the small stack with 1850. I mean, you could definitely go larger here. 4x plus the dead call would be to like 100. 90. I mean, it's not like going to like 60 or something like that, but UTG calls.
Yep, and then the button calls.
And the button calls, which is that's a double flat. That is a double flat. The only thing I'll say, again, probably a little bit advanced for this level, this is actually, normally when we think about a double flat, of course, a double flat is when you call a raise and then you call a 3-bet, right? You've double flatted. It's usually a very collapsed range. In this one scenario, in this specific configuration, the button's double flat might not be as collapsed as we would traditionally think of a double flat, because for the same reason where I was talking about, would you always 3-bet the under the gun open heads up against UTG if UTG was a tight opener, the button has that same, he has calls against a UTG opener that would otherwise be 3-bets, especially in a non-3 blind format. This is just 2 blinds. So the button is less collapsed here with a double flat than otherwise we would think, just as a little bit of note. So 270 here to the flop. Okay.
So the flop is jack of diamonds, jack of clubs, 9 of spades.
Jack of diamonds, jack of clubs, 9 of spades.
Yep.
So you've got 2 overs, got shot to a 10 on this paired board. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And a backdoor flush draw.
Yep.
So I check and it checks around.
So hero checks and it goes check, check. Did you think about betting here?
I thought about betting. I thought the button could have a lot of jack X, kind of you're talking about his sort of condensed range after double flatting pre-flop. And I feel like this would be a good hand to barrel off heads up, but these are both pretty aggressive villains that I've played with a lot. So I think it's good to have some checks.
So you were going to probably check call unless it was, if it had gone bet call, would you have overcalled?
I don't think so. It'd be kind of hard to realize out of position, this kind of situation.
But check call heads up?
Yeah, check call heads up.
Now, do you do this with your overpairs some of the time too? Like what if you had aces or kings here?
I would definitely be checking aces or kings here and could also play those as a check call.
Okay. So I mean that inherently it is balanced than what you're doing. And you know, again, in live poker you don't have to be balanced, but it is unbalanced to check king queen here and not have some checks with overpairs and things like that. The pot remains 270. Okay.
I think I'd be a lot more likely to bet with queens or tens.
For protection. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay.
So the pot's still 270. The turn is a juicy one. It's the 10 of diamonds.
Oh. The turn's the 10 of diamonds. So you turn the nut straight. You also have a royal flush draw. 10 of diamonds, jack of clubs, 9 of spades, turns the 10 of diamonds. And of course, you've got the king, queen of diamonds. By the way, so you have a straight here. When your opponents check the flop, it wasn't, it is a rainbow board. Do you think that there is some frequency that someone might be checking a jack here?
I don't think so, unless they really just want to give me rope. I think if the under the gun player had a jack, they would definitely bet it on the flop.
Okay. So you tend to dismiss the fact that these guys have jack X then?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay. But obviously they could hit a 10 here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would think that if you tend to dismiss that these guys have real thick value on the flop, then I wouldn't think the sizing here should be that large. You would want to get some 10x to call you, something that's got, I'm trying to think of what would have would anything have something like ace queen, something like that to call. That would kind of determine what my sizing here is on the turn if I didn't think these guys had a lot of slow plays on flop.
So
plus you have the diamonds in your hand, right? So that gives them less of a chance of having diamond draw.
I do, but they could still have like ace 8, ace 9 of diamonds, or ace 5, ace 4 of diamonds.
Sure.
So I bet 175.
Okay. It's not crazy.
It felt a little big in game, but
I think I might have bet 100 personally. Again, you don't think that they're trapping, with jack X or 9X. Of course, there is the possibility somebody might hit 10-10. That is out there. So you bet 175, okay.
And then under the gun, next to act, raises to 500.
Guy behind him folds.
Yes, and it gets back to me.
So button folds. So obviously he is saying that it's interesting that you kind of slipped that in when I was asking you about sandbagging a jack, and you thought that this guy would bet a lot. What you really want to hope is that he doesn't have an unfold jack, because this smells like he's got pocket tens, right?
Yeah.
Pocket tens, pocket nines. The other thing too is people get it's kind of interesting with a guy behind when he raises here to 500, because people love to get trappy on boards like this with boats. Like, if he's got 10-10 here, there's a fair amount of opponents that would call, because I don't know how bad the button is. Like, I had actually, I had a hand like this in a limped pot. I think you're a subscriber, aren't you, Jake, to the pod?
Yeah, the button is also a subscriber, so he's a pretty good player.
Okay. I don't know if you caught my flagship pod from last week, and it was a limped pot. It was the last hand where I had jack 7 and I made a boat on the turn and a limp pot, and I was in the straddle. I was trying to rope this Asian lady behind me, and I flatted turn with a boat. You'll see that quite a bit. But if I was under the gun and I had 10-10 and I knew the guy behind me was good, I would probably be less likely to do that, just because, the guy's decent, right? Whereas if it was a bad player, you try to get him in there with a queen, or try to get him there drawing diamonds that are dead. So maybe that's a little bit less, less of a factor. It's getting back around to you now. The pot's 4. The pot is going to be 675 plus. So it's 955, and it's 325 for you to call. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think this is a pretty standard call. For a brief second, I considered going all in, but I felt that
why would
all
you?
My equity,
why would you want to go all in here?
I don't think I would. That's the
okay.
Call.
Just it doesn't make any sense, right? You call by boats, and you might get the slivers of ace jack that was slow playing to fold, right? Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? It's like I said, it's interesting that you slipped in the fact that you didn't think he's slow playing a jack all that much. Now, personally, I think there might be some jack X maybe that checks some of the time here. That's what you really want. You do have a couple of redraw outs in the form of your royal, but obviously, if the river comes a brick and you check, you kind of want the guy to either check behind or bet real small and then try to come up with hope that he's got a jack or something like that.
Yeah, so I call the raise and we go to the river.
So the pot now is going to be 1270, and you guys have
just about pot behind.
Okay. So it's jack of diamonds, jack of clubs, 9 of spades, 10 of diamonds here with king, queen of diamonds. three betting out of the big blind, bets the turn after it gets checked through, and now UTG raises to 500. Hero calls 1270 the river. Okay.
Yep. Now the river is the ace of hearts.
Ace of hearts.
Yes.
Well, that's another hand that you lose to.
Yeah.
That's another hand you lose to. If he was slow playing ace jack, that's another hand you lose to. And the other thing about this particular card here now is that I think I don't even know if he. So you've got king, queen of diamonds. This might shut a lot of the action down in the sense that if you check, I think a lot of guys might actually check. If they had taken a line with queen jack, king jack, right? Like this, I don't know if they're betting the river here.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking. I don't think Under the Gun ever has aces. I think they're always four betting pre-flop. They're a very aggressive player. So I decided to jam.
You upfront jammed?
Yeah.
What do you, so do what, just to represent pocket aces?
I just wanted to get the max from king jack, queen jack that I thought might check behind if they were sandbagging.
Wait a minute. So I'm just trying to figure out what's this play here? Because so you jam for about pot, I'll put 1270. So you're saying this is a value bet?
I think so. But that's why I called it in, because I'm not really sure. Like going back and thinking about it, I think betting small if I'm going to lead here is good, or just check. And
well, so here's the thing that's because the thing that's weird about this is, again, you had slipped in the fact that you thought that this guy mostly bets Jack X on the flop. But taking a step back from that, let's say that you were comfortable with king queen for value on the turn. And I'm not saying that I am comfortable with this. I actually wouldn't have done this, but I'm just trying to make it consistent. If you were comfortable trying to get the most amount of money in from like Jack X, I would have three bet the turn. Personally, I wouldn't have waited for this ace to come where now it fills king queen and there's less of it, and fills me having pocket aces. I'm talking about you, the hero, where now like it's less likely that I'm getting value from king jack and queen jack. That is if you wanted to take this line, if you were not scared of the boat for maximum value trying to get a jack. I personally don't think your hand's strong enough to do that. I think this is a bad card. The reason why I was shocked when you said you upfront it all in was like, I don't know. I wouldn't just want to turn this into a bluff. I mean, if you're staring square at a boat, I don't think you're going to get a boat to fold. I mean, it's gigantic exploit, but it sounds to me like you're saying you're value betting though.
yeah, I have a lot of history with this villain, and they like to call me down. So I wanted to go for some thin value.
That would be some thin value, man. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the only thing I would say is that like from your opponent's perspective, he has to, like, a lot of things have to happen here for him to call with like king jack, queen jack. Again, he would have had to not bet the flop. Okay. Raise the turn, fine. But like when you bet and call his raise, are you like what if I have queen jack and king jack and I played it this way? What am I hoping that you have that's a bluff? Because what is your range of bet calling turn? Like you're turning like ace king, ace queen here, like into a bluff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess that's possible if I had like ace king or ace queen of diamonds that just totally misses.
That you rip the river here?
I think against like a bad opponent, I might go for it with value with like ace king, ace queen if it was played this way. But this opponent's pretty good.
Well, what do you mean how can you go for value if he has a jack, if you have ace king, ace queen here?
Well, I'm saying if it was like if I was up against a whale, someone who could just have a 10 here.
And that raised to 500. I mean, I don't mean to muddle things, but what I'm saying is that like, again, if I'm your opponent and you take this line and I did have king jack, queen jack, like it's really hard for you to have a bluff unless you are bluffing here with like ace X of diamonds. You river top pair and you decide to ship it with ace X of diamonds, like ace 5 of diamonds, ace 8 of diamonds, or turning ace king or ace queen into a bluff. So if this guy's good, yeah. So you jam here for value. And again, if I wanted to take value with this hand, I actually probably would have played it differently by 3-betting turn. Personally, if I was in your spot, I would check and pray that it gets checked back.
So what would you do if you checked and villain jams the river?
Oh man, I think it's a real tough call. Well, I mean, I think it's a tough call. The one thing that I will say is that, I mean, if you did have some ace X of diamonds here, because when I had said on the street before, like this river, a guy might like check back like king jack, queen jack. But now that I think of it though, I like to get greedy against somebody that might have ace X of diamonds, although I don't know if I would use the all-in sizing though.
That was another consideration, that if they did river and ace, this villain is very aggressive and will raise nut flush draws. They'll also bluff the river, which might be better reason to check, let them bluff.
You mean like, right, but you know, we'd have to find the bluff though.
Yeah, there's not a lot of bluffs on this board.
And again, if he was raising turn with like ace X of diamonds, it's just, he sort of just checks it back. Some people are saying, could the villain also have king queen here as well? It's interesting. The villain also has king queen here, and let's say the hero checks. Again, I probably wouldn't want to take an all-in sizing here with king queen, because I'm trying to target like ace X of diamonds.
So targeting ace X of diamonds, could I go like 250, 300 with a little block bet?
If you're talking about you now from up front, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you, I mean, you go small. If you were trying to value bet here, you could possibly go smaller to try to get a jack to call, bet 400. And the thing is that what's interesting about that is you can never really get jammed on, except by 4 jacks, right?
I still have aces.
Yeah, I mean, if you bet the turn and he raised you and you called, and I had pocket tens here, or right, let's say I squarely had pocket tens, and then on the river, you bet 400. I don't think I can actually raise you here unless I think you're bad enough to call with like ace, king, and diamonds, right?
Yeah. I think that would have been a much better play looking back on it.
So what ended up happening?
The villain thinks about it for 30, 40 seconds and calls with pocket nines.
Yeah. So you thought you were going for value, and then you might have accidentally got him to fold the best hand.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been great if that happened, but
I mean, it makes more. I don't agree with your line. Again, I think you sort of called an audible. If you go back and listen to this, it actually makes more sense for value to do this for value. Although I don't agree with your sizing, than to like turn your hand and no bluff. And again, making this play to fold somebody off of a boat, especially with no like key blockers, is suicide. That's what I thought you were doing at first when you said you jammed the river, you know?
Yeah.
So
I think I was going for value, but I just went way too big. And another part of the problem is I have a king and queen in my hand, so it's harder for them to have king jack or queen jack.
Right. Jake, appreciate the call. Thank you very much, sir.